Good afternoon. I'm Gillian McNamee, and I'm Director of Teacher Education, the teacher preparation side of Erikson Institute, working closely, all of the teacher education faculty do, with our professional development efforts, looking at both the preparation and the ongoing support of teachers in Chicago public schools. I recognize we have high standards in our discussion today for teachers, for children, and we've certainly come off high expectations for the last minute of play, given last night's American adventure in the Super Bowl. My goal these final remarks is to hold your attention as carefully as our two quarterbacks did last night. I want to help bring some closure to our discussion this afternoon with two stories from Chicago public school classrooms and with some thinking about what's going on there. So the first story, it is called Concentrating. It's Tuesday, the fourth week of school, and kindergarten teacher Cynthia Bates is guiding her 28 kindergarten children in small groups for what she calls our time for stories and words. The children work in small groups of 5 or 6, rotating through different activities during the week in this time before lunch every day. The story and word activities at this point in her classroom include a listening center where children listen to a book on tape, each child with their own headphones. There's a letter and word center where children manipulate magnetic letters to make words, their own names, plus words on index cards that come from recent and current read-alouds. There's a reading center where the children sit in the library to read and explore different kinds of books they've been introduced to. There's a printing center where today's letter is M. Children are given lined paper with the capital M at the beginning, and they're asked to practice making letter shapes, filling in each line with their pencil. And then there's a journal writing table where the children draw a picture in their notebook and dictate or write a word or short story to accompany it. The children go off to their assigned tasks. The teacher focuses her time assisting children working in their journals. Now, as Mrs. Bates guides a child in labeling his picture with a big T for a truck, Levon calls out from the printing center, "Teacher, can I do A's?" Meaning, can he write the letter A on his paper? Mrs. Bates calls back, "After you finish your M's, Levon, check with the others at your table and make sure they're making M's too." There's a good bit of hum of conversation in the classroom. The children work for about 15 minutes and then the teacher calls for cleanup. When the group goes to lunch, Cynthia has time to talk and prepare for the afternoon. She reviews the journals and papers from the children who worked at the printing center. Levon's paper has 4 M's printed neatly. Cynthia says with disappointment, "Is that all he could get done? I expected him to finish the page." Maybe he's doing too much talking and not enough working. But I reply, wait till you hear what he was saying. I drifted over that way as soon as I heard Levon ask if he could do A's. I wondered whether he had something different in mind than the M's. But when I got there, he was saying, "I like M. I coerate. I conerate. I suderate. Concentrate. I'm a concentrating. Watch me. I can do this real slow." Brandon said, "Wait a minute, I can do that too. Real slow." Both boys had their noses almost touching the page as they drew the most beautiful, careful, straight lines, each stroke of the M. The two girls working beside them filled their pages with M's and talked about what they were going to have for lunch today. They knew it was chili, tortilla chips, apples, carrots. I said to Mrs. Bates, those boys were doing exactly what you would want in your wildest dreams. And Levon had a word for it, concentrating. How did he know that word? Cynthia was taken aback and said, wow, I would have never guessed what was going on. And these M's really are beautiful. Cynthia talked about, with the children the previous week, about concentrating, about doing careful work. And she showed them how to draw pictures of themselves and their family. She made sure to model on the easel how they were to draw with newly sharpened pencils, using lines very carefully to represent people and their features. She said she used the word concentrate. She wanted to see every detail. It's important to Cynthia that the children learn to draw and illustrate their thinking as carefully as she asks them then to talk, and she said, I want you to write that carefully too. I said, well, you hit the gold mine with that group, and I hope you will show the whole class. Tell them this is what you hoped for. Tell them Miss Jill heard them talk about concentrating. Tell them you're really proud of Levon's work. Levon's work illustrates an essential part of these high expectations for learning, that as the educators, we care not only about what children are learning, but we care about how they learn. We've heard a lot about that this afternoon. Now, Cynthia intuitively knew this was important, but she began to doubt the value of the children's talk and the way they approached their work when she was reviewing the outcomes of the small group time. Now, research shows that an important part of early childhood education that prepares children for successful learning comes from what our first speaker this afternoon, Cybele Raver, talked about, executive functioning. It's the way children use their minds to accomplish goals. And in 1995, the National Education Goals Panel, experts across the country came together and set out 4 crucial areas in early learning, which we see here: the understanding the nature of children's thinking and their knowledge, the importance of language skills, social emotional well-being. We know their physical and motor development is critical. We know there's a place for recess in learning. And for the first time, though, in 1995, they set out this 5th area, approaches to learning. Now, approaches to learning are the observable qualities that children show us when they're carrying out an activity. Are the children playful? Are they chatty? Are they hesitant? Do they have a goal? Are they eager? Are they distractible? Does it take them time to warm up to tasks? A team of educators here at Erikson carried out a study of children in Chicago public schools on this working approaches. Jackie Chen, Luisiana Melendez, Jennifer McCrae, Ann Mazer, and myself, we studied over 100 preschool and kindergarten children engaged in assessment activities in literacy, math, science, and the arts, both visual and performing arts. We looked at not only what children achieved, but how they did it. And in assessing the how of learning, each teacher had one of us with her or him, and we observed and documented and recorded children's behaviors along several lines. There were 2 kinds of working approaches that we studied. Evaluative working approaches are behaviors that children engage in that actually promote or hinder their performance. But then there are also what we call descriptive approaches, which describe individual differences among children that are not related to performance. And it turns out both kinds are really important. And we compiled a definition of both that we used in our ratings. So here you'll see a profile of what are the evaluative working approaches. And we came to this both through an extensive review of literature on children's learning and then collaboration with ourselves and the teachers and fine-tuning these as we observed in classrooms. So here you'll see these qualities: hesitant or eager, distractible or attentive, haphazard, organized. And then these descriptive qualities, which are characteristics of young children and their personalities. How quick, fast, slow, or chatty children are, how much they interact with others. There were 3 important findings that emerged from this study that we carried out that may be surprising. First of all, working approaches vary given the activity. They are not stable traits. Children are not just chatty in general or focused in general. What we found was that these characteristics of children in learning changed when the activity changed, when they were drawing a picture, when they were doing a science observation, when they were reading a book. What we actually tracked across these children was change as a function of the activity. Another important dimension of change is change over time, that the children's approaches by age, at the ages of 3, 4, and 5, they began to shift. And this is critical for us to know, because as we've been learning today, if these approaches to learning develop, they can be learned. We can teach Levon and his classmates what it looks like to concentrate, and the children can try out these frames of mind, and they can practice them. Third, we found that these approaches do in fact affect performance. The evaluative ones do. How children focus, how resourceful they are when they get stuck, whether or not they have a plan, these characteristics make a difference as we look toward outcomes. And this means we'll want to create classrooms that are like laboratories where there's a conscious effort to model what matters and to model our acceptance and enjoyment of the rest of the children's personalities and characteristics that enrich learning, not detract from it. So, for example, the pace of learning. It does not all have to be all fast, quick, and delivered, nice and neat. It doesn't have to be quiet in classrooms. The inclination to be playful and to talk actually can enhance learning. Cynthia's observations of her own children provide evidence of quality and high expectations. Her work attests to what we're trying to understand about the complexity of early childhood teachers' work. What I want to show us next is that the opportunities for rigor and challenge that we seek in our schools are right in front of us. And I think we've had excellent images of those in our presentations in the second half of our afternoon. Children are eager and hungry for learning. And one of our challenges is, can we allow ourselves as teachers to be asking questions out of genuine curiosity to understand what are our children thinking, and then observe and listen? What does such teaching and learning look like if we try to step back and describe it? The National Academy of Education in 2005 gave us a very important document, A Good Teacher in Every Classroom, that describes what we know about effective teachers. And we get these 3 bodies of knowledge. And you might say we can think back to even Jennifer Cheatham's presentation when we began this afternoon. She had 3 circles. They were a little different from this. Let's see what comes from the National Academy. In the first area, we have knowledge, and we're well aware now of the importance that teachers carry ideas, concepts of each discipline that shape the lesson and the activities we're going to engage children in. Human development focuses on who our children are, their personalities, those dispositions toward learning, what their background, skills, and knowledge are, as well as our awareness and attention to their home language, their home culture, their family circumstances. With pedagogy, teachers are thinking about how do we engage children in learning across the school day. Now, I want to take us to a little bit of a close-up look at each of these three areas as we try to gather up at the end of our day what is involved in effective teaching of young children. In the human development area, we know that learning happens inside of a relationship. Learning is a dialogue. It's a give and take. This is what comprehension means, making and taking meaning in a relationship that involves two or more people. And with schooling, it also comes to include books of all kinds and authors and their messages. So we want a lot of give and take. We do not get meaning if we only focus on dispensing knowledge to some anonymous group of children. When teachers provide books that reflect children's interests, their background, in the library and listening center, we find teachers who are courting children in this relationship as teacher and learner. When teachers guide work in centers, they are acknowledging the need to converse along the way and to make room for children's differing approaches. Teachers then can be mindful of friendship and the give and take of help among classworks to ensure that work gets done. Now, in early childhood, we know that the full breadth of learning includes all 6 domains of study. I've highlighted the 2 around which we've developed common core standards, but we're aware in the profession of the need for knowledge across all 6 content areas, particularly with young children, because their learning is integrated multimedia learning experiences. In early childhood, the roots of math and literacy are in all of the content areas. It's not separate. For example, in a story like Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, we find rich opportunities for thinking about the characters and their motivations. It's a powerful story to talk about with even 3, 4, and 5-year-old children. Goldilocks turns out to be the epitome of our ambivalence as teachers about young children. Is Goldilocks lost and seeking shelter? Is she inquisitive, curious, and wondering? Or is she bold and in need of reining in because she trespasses inappropriately? It turns out teachers have a lot of strong feelings about Goldilocks. There are a lot of Goldilockses in our classrooms, and we're not quite sure what to make of them. The arts are critical for giving voice to the possible interpretations that young children and teachers have about a story like this. The dramatization of such a story, the drawing of pictures, the paintings of the characters, and discussions of it while working with clay or puppets. All of these ways of examining the story give us a basis for understanding a rich array of possible meanings. And it turns out, in this story, we get this rich array of math and science concepts that are essential if we're going to understand where the meaning comes from. There is, in Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, one-to-one correspondence. There are sets. There's the main character, Goldilocks, observing, comparing for size, for other attributes, heat, softness. Teaching effectively requires careful attention to these concepts and ideas across all subject areas as they emerge in an integrated experience for young children. The third area, pedagogy. When educating young children, there are 5 characteristics that are contributing to their understanding and comprehension and learning. First is balance. Balance between child-initiated exploration and discovery and teacher-led activities introducing concepts and ideas. Now, 2 years ago, we had the document Crisis in the Kindergarten from Joan Allman and Ed Miller. And what they were concerned about is the omission, the leaving out of 1/2 of the dialogue in learning. Time for children to be active, to explore, to initiate conversation, and extend thinking in opportunities that we often clump together and call play. Now, what they set out in this continuum is that what we don't want to allow in our classrooms are the 2 ends of the continuum, 1 and 4. One where we just let children go off and do whatever in the classroom. And equally problematic is the classroom where we are only engaged in didactic dispensing of knowledge. So what we're trying to capture now is what is the back and forth between number 2 and number 3 on the continuum. The doll corner, the block corner can be 2 of the most powerful contexts providing incentives for talk and sustained thinking in hypothetical worlds, which is the essence of what reading and school learning are all about. And yet, we fear letting children have a shot at processing, at expanding, and contributing to the development of ideas we hope they will have. Effective teaching provides a balance between the teacher-directed and child-initiated learning in school. It's not enough to relegate child-initiated learning outside of school. The renowned early childhood educator Vivian Paley heard Nobel Prize winner in chemistry Dudley Hirschbach describe his work with undergraduates in chemistry at Harvard. He said that the first thing he asks freshman students to do at Harvard is to imagine the world before certain elements were discovered. They were to make up stories about the world just as they would when they were children and look for new ways that the storyline might be played out without those elements. The scientists whose footsteps we want our children to walk in are counting on children having had time to play, balanced with teachers who are seeding the ground with books, concepts, and questions for the children to think about. The next critical area characteristic is time. On an earlier visit to Mrs. Bates's classroom, I heard a child ask her, "Teacher, is this a hurry-up day?" Mrs. Bates told me later that she winced that such a question would be asked casually. She says she does everything she can to shield the children from the pressure to cram as much learning into the school day. And what she knows this means is maximize instruction, the presentation of knowledge and skills in as little time as possible, which is the opposite of what intellectual pursuits call for. In-depth inquiries that lead to meaningful questions require time spent on exploring so that children can bring into their own sphere of interest and control and influence these new ideas. Another word for time is patience. It's essential that young children have time, space, and permission to think about and get confused, to get disoriented, to make mistakes, and then to consider new ways to approach a problem. Time is a commodity we're about to get more of in Chicago public schools. How will we use it? Conversation. Schooling is all about words. Oral language development is the first and most necessary foundation for school learning to come. We need dialogues, not monologues, in classrooms. Children need to be marinated daily in deep, sustained, rich conversations with one another and with their teachers. Play and actively engaging with the materials that define schooling provide these incentives for conversation. We have manipulatives, the blocks, art materials, all these things that we offer provide vocabulary and routines that will prime the pump for math and literacy learning that we hope will come. Children will not be able to resist. Reflection and revisiting in settings that promote learning. We know that learning is not a shotgun affair with one exposure to an idea and then move on. We need to open up topics and books and questions, explore them from many points of view, and revisit weeks and months later. This is what makes for depth, strength, and a robust quality to ideas that our children will carry for years to come. And finally, monitoring and documenting learning. We know how to do this: listening, observing, and recording. Now, I have one final story to tell you, and this one from a Head Start classroom, where the teacher is practicing asking open-ended questions with her 4-year-olds. This teacher, along with others in her center, are thinking about books they choose for discussion and then the questions they plan to ask. Now, Mrs. Roskin says she wants to focus on feelings and help children develop a rich vocabulary for all different kinds of feelings. And she picked the 3 Billy Goats Gruff to read, to act out, and to discuss with her children. It's clearly a great story for portraying feelings. And in this case, she wants to ask the children, why is the troll so mean? However, watching Mrs. Roskins ask the question and carry out the discussion, it was she and I who had the most to learn about this feeling in the children's discussion. Mrs. Roskin brings the children to the rug, and at the end of their group time, she reads the story. She calls 4 children up, and they act out the story, the troll and the 3 billy goats. When they were done, she says, I have a question for you. Why do you think the troll is so mean? A child responds, his mother died. Another says, yeah, she did. The teacher asked again, but the troll, why is he being so mean to the billy goats? A third child says, she told him to do it. The teacher says, but there's no mother in the story. A child says, the father, he dead too. Another child says, they both dead. The teacher's really thrown and feeling like this is not going anywhere. She says one more time, there's no mother and father in the story. How is the troll feeling? The child says, mean. Another says, he has to fight. His mommy told him to do it. The teacher says, how do the billy goats feel about the troll? She's trying to get them to focus on the troll. They not scared. The one child says, yeah, the little one is scared. The teacher says, so Sam, you think the billy goats are scared, and Tonya, you think they're not scared. Do you think they know they're okay because there's 3 of them and only 1 troll? And the children say, yeah. Now, Mrs. Roskins was anxious to get to familiar ground with the children. She did what we try to coach teachers to avoid if they can at all, asking yes and no questions, which really provide a simple forced choice, is it good or bad? But for today, Mrs. Roskins and her children have a graceful way to bow out of this discussion and move on to other activities. Now, the next day, we met with other Head Start teachers and 2 kindergarten teachers. Mrs. Roskins was not eager to discuss what she felt was a failed discussion. She tells the group, The children kept saying this talk about the mother and the father. I don't know why they kept repeating it. His mother died, his father died, they both died. Why did they get hooked on this idea? I couldn't get them off it. What am I supposed to do when the children say things that don't make sense? I, along with the other teachers, appreciated Mrs. Roskin's dilemma. The group discussed ways they try to manage when children say things that seem like they're off topic. The teacher suggested that maybe she could just keep reminding them about what the story says and tell them she'll reread it again tomorrow and ask them to really listen to the words of the story and then see what they think. Maybe they're just watching too much TV or other movies. But at this moment, suddenly one of the teachers says, wait, the children have nailed it. The meaning of the troll's nasty behavior. They got it. I can't believe we missed it. So the group stopped and this teacher continued, look what they are saying. The children recognize why anyone would become so wild, so mean, and threaten others. He's an orphan. He has no home. He has no parents. He's homeless. The children knew that. That's why he's living under a bridge. Of course the troll's mother is dead, and his father. And yes, his mother would tell him to stand up for himself and fight to protect himself if he needed to. As an orphan, the troll has nothing. It's his last bit of territory, the space under the bridge. The children got it. It was an amazing moment. This teacher helped us all recognize that it was the children who were clued into the meaning of this story far more quickly than the teachers. And I have known this story my whole life and had never thought of this. The skills involved in leading an open-ended discussion can take years to cultivate and need nurturing. It takes years to learn to listen. Such discussions require a rock-bottom belief that there are no right or wrong answers. There are no such things as off the wall. They're not possible in the realm of open-ended questions. Teachers must bring a commitment to exploring meaning and interpretations of text and following every lead the children want to consider. Teaching requires a willingness to work with groups of children day after day to figure out why do they think the things they do. How can we hope to connect with them and get their commitment to ideas we hold if we're not equally willing to listen to them? My father ran a business, a family business of selling men's suits and ties. And one of my first jobs as a child was certainly working in the basement making boxes for the shirts. But my first selling job was on the main floor of the store selling socks. I'll never forget one day when a lady came in with a wrinkled shirt that she had bought, and she said it was not the quality she thought it would be. And the saleswoman didn't know what to do with the wrinkled shirt, so she took it to my father and said, "What do I do?" And my father said, without blinking, "Give her a new shirt. Give her the best we have." We have to trust the customer. I'll never forget this moment. It made a deep impression on me, and I think to the saleswoman and probably the customer and those who watched her around her in the store. I think it's a message we must remember now as we move forward, to trust the customers who are our children in this case of schools. Now, the next day, Mrs. Roskins went back to her class, and she couldn't wait for group time. She told us later that she told the children she got what they were saying. She asked them, was she right? She said their eyes lit up, knowing that she understood why the troll was fighting. She said they acted out the story, and now she could see their thinking. In Erikson's work with teachers, we believe in being a partner to teachers wondering what children are thinking about and studying ways to ask better questions and then listen carefully. We work on the design of daily activities teachers present, and then the questions we can ask. The purpose of the questions are not to trick children or test them or probe their meaning, but to probe, what is the meaning and how valuable are they to the children's explorations? Teachers need this kind of support in listening to their children's meanings, knowing that when we tap into children's thinking, we too will have to wonder what's going on. This line of challenge for children and teachers is what we're embarking on in high-quality teaching, where we have to work as hard as the children. As educators, we can either see rigor as a way of getting children by the scruff of the neck and say, have powerful thoughts, have the thoughts I'm having, or we can approach children and show them we're listening and wondering right along with them. How willing are we to listen as well as to speak? The opportunity for quality and rigor are at our fingertips if we're ready to remember and bring to bear these three sources of knowledge that effective teaching rests on and listening closely. I want to thank you all for coming today and for listening, for, as we saw in our final discussion, coming to a new place where we're thinking about rigor. I think our journey has brought us there, where we're leaving with a different sense of what does it mean to engage children in high-quality intellectual learning, which doesn't seem so scary and I think seems really exciting. And this is the point where I actually get envious of the teachers who get to go back to the classrooms and ask those questions every day. We from Erikson would like you to check your packet for a pink form that is an evaluation of the experiences you've had today, and we'd greatly appreciate your feedback. And you can leave it with us as you leave today. Thank you for coming.